What is up, Renegades? I am Lupine Fiasco. Welcome back to more daily FaB gameplay. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What we do here is review recordings of games I have played on Talishar. I will talk about the lines I take and the decision making behind it, just to make sure that everything I'm doing in-game is as crisp and tight as can be. This is a learning tool for me and hopefully a learning tool for you. Today's game is fresh from Talishar. I like to give these recordings a few days to simmer, let future games erase some of that decision-making bias, help me look at these videos a bit more objectively. But Bright Lights is the hot new thing in Flesh and Blood, and I want to make sure we are all getting these games as they happen. Today's game is against Teklovossen. What can we expect from Teklovossen? How quickly is he going to pump Evos out onto the board? How often is he going to shoot the gun? I have no idea. Let's get into sideboarding and the game plan and learn it all together. This is the harmonized Kodachi list. You can find a deck tech available on my channel. You can find the deck link in the video description below. While you are down looking at that description, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It is the best way to support me and free FaB content. You can leave a comment if you have any questions or feedback. And at the end of this video, if you liked it, smash that like button. Been trying to alternate between Emberblade and Kodachi lists going forwards. I know a few of you have asked for more up-to-date Kodachi gameplay. I'm glad I'm running Kodachis against Teklovossen. My understanding of the hero is that he will not be starting with armor, at least not armor that blocks. He is trying to put out the Evos to buff his Terminator tank, his War Machine, and his Teklo leveler. Towards the end of the game, he's going to be blocking everything. But at the start of the game, he can't block our Kodachis easily. He can't block our Phoenix Flames easily. He can't block double strikes. So I'm expecting that we are going to get some Mask of Momentum triggers. As such, I will not be touching the starting equipment. We are going to keep our Mask of Momentum and our Flame Scale Furnace, as well as our harmonized Kodachis. As far as what we're boarding out of the 60, nothing for now. I suspect that Warmonger's Diplomacy may not be as good against Teklovossen as I would like it to be. Yes, Evos are non-attack actions. They cannot be played under the effects of war. That said, I am nervous that Teklo would respond to the Warmonger's play by activating his ability and playing out an Evo at instant speed, then taking the rest of his turn. This is my first game against Teklovossen. I don't know how realistic that is. In our Kodachi list, our blue count is already so low that cutting the Warmonger's Diplomacy is generally not a good move. If you are on a bluer, heavy Emberblade list, it's something to consider. Try out Warmongers. Let me know in the comments if you've seen it work or not work. But in this game, we are going to be leaving our 60 board list alone. Getting into the game here, we have Teklovossen winning the die roll, choosing to go first, likely to throw down some Evos if he's got them. He does not seem to have them, so instead just playing out a Junkyard Dog for 6. We can block this pretty easily. We have a number of 3 blocks in our hand. We are going to keep the Double Strike and the Breaking Point. They go very well together. Double Strike putting 2 links on the chain, Breaking Point having a Rupture effect. Really, any combination of cards is going to get us to that Breaking Point, red or otherwise, but we do draw the blue. So we've got a pretty spicy turn cooking, especially with our Mask of Momentum here. Teklovossen starting with all 4 Cogsworks pieces. If you have not seen the Cogworks pieces, none of them have block value. They all start with a steam counter. They all have an effect that costs 1 resource that can only be used if Teklovossen has boosted for the turn. We can get into the effects as they come up, but for the purpose of planning this turn 1, keep in mind, Teklovossen does not have block value at this point, which means we want to threaten our mask momentum, and we want to do it with very inefficient attacks. What that means is if we pitch our Lava Vein Loyalty, send Kodachi, Kodachi, Double Strike, all 3 of these attacks are attacking for 1. Teklovossen has no armor to easily block this, so if he ever wants to disrupt this chain to stop the Mask of Momentum trigger, he has to give us a real card. He has to give us a full card or 3 block value to stop 1 point of damage. And all the while, we have 2 attacks sitting in our hand and a double strike sitting in our banish zone. We're gonna get some cards from Teklovossen, or he's gonna give us 5 intelligence. So we're starting this turn off with Kodachi, Kodachi, Double Strike. That is going to give us 1 resource sitting available, a Double Strike in our banish zone, a Ronin Renegade, and a Breaking Point in our hand. We can go 6 links wide this turn, and we're going to see if Teklovossen wants to give us a real card to stop the Mask of Momentum trigger. Let's say he does. Let's say he does block the Double Strike. We can then follow up with Ronin Renegade, Double Strike number 2, Breaking Point. Even if we don't get that Mask of Momentum trigger, we're getting 3 cards from Teklovossen to stop both triggers and the Breaking Point. That's just great value for us. We're pushing damage at the same time. We're keeping Teklovossen from doing anything relevant. That's just good news for us. He does let the Mask of Momentum trigger go through. We draw a Soul Bead Strike. Really not what we want to see here. We have a few options. We can play out the rest of this turn like I described. Ronin Renegade, Double Strike, Breaking Point. That is a total of 10 points of damage threatened, as Double Strike is getting the Shuko buff. Ronin Renegade and Breaking Point together put 2 Draconic Links on the chain, so we cannot play out this hand and pick up our Phoenix Flame at the end of the turn. What I would like to do is arsenal this Ronin Renegade. If we play out the hand, as I described, we can arsenal the Soul Bead Strike, which is generally not good. As far as blues go, Soul Bead Strike is one of our better blues to arsenal because it can have go again. It's better than arsenaling a Warmonger's Diplomacy, for example. But we really don't want to give Teklovossen the opportunity to stop our turn, and if we get caught with 2 finishers in our next hand, let's say Brain with Cinderclaw, blue, Lava Burst, we would love to be able to play one of those Lava Bursts and arsenal one of those Lava Bursts. And we can't count on being able to do that if we're trying to work a Soul Bead Strike into our turn. So what I'm looking to do is, instead of arsenaling this Soul Bead Strike, I want to pitch it to pick up a Phoenix Flame. It is slightly less damage. Soul Bead Strike deals 2 points of damage, Phoenix Flame deals 1, but we don't count on this Soul Bead Strike needing to hit. The Phoenix Flame has natural go again. At this point in our turn, we do not have a Draconic Link on the chain. We've attacked with 2 Kodachis and a Double Strike. We want to arsenal this Ronin Renegade, and this Breaking Point does not have go again. So if we want our Phoenix Flame to deal damage, we are relying on the Shuko to give it +1 power. So at this point in the turn, we are going to pitch our Soul Bead Strike to pick up our Phoenix Flame, pay the full 3 resources to FaB, attack with the Phoenix Flame. Phoenix Flame gets the Shuko trigger, which means it attacks for 1, not 0. Then Double Strike still has 1 power. because of its printed value. It is a slightly less efficient way to get damage out of this turn, but it gives us a much stronger arsenal to set up for our next turn. And keeping in mind that Teklovossen has no armor value, we want to be setting up these 5-card hands that are guaranteed to put 6 chain links on the combat chain. Teklovossen eating all of the damage. Breaking Point sniping a Terminator tank. Terminator tank at the start of the game, pretty unimpactful. A 6-cost Command and Conquer is really not where Teklovossen wants to be, but we're still happy to snipe a power card. Here, Zipper Hit coming for 5 with Go Again, banishing an Evo Steel Soul Memory that is an Evo. Teklovossen can play this from hand, instead choosing to play out Twin Drive to banish more equipment. None of this is anything we're interested in blocking. We do have 3 3-block blues in our hand, but as we'll get into, we are able to put 7 links on the chain with all of these cards, which is something we're happy to do. If Teklovossen wants to race this, that's totally fine. Looking to get some value out of the Cogsworks piece with the floating resource, Teklovossen activates Cogsworks base head. For those of you who don't know, for the cost of 1 resource, if Teklovossen has boosted this turn, he can use the steam counter from the base head to put an attack action card in the banish zone back into his deck. Here, just getting a Sprocket Rocket, we are at the start of the game. He hasn't done much banishing up till this point, but he has a head Evo in his banish zone. He can play it from banish using his hero power. Might as well get some value out of the base head with a floating resource. Using the last 2 resources to play out Evo Sentry base arms, that is a 2-block Evo with Battle Worn. It will generate 3 block over the course of the game. It means we have to be a bit more mindful about how we are sequencing our turns now that Teklovossen has literal any block value on his armor, but it's just 1 piece. This is fine. I had said that we could put 7 chain links on the table. We can do this by pitching our Warmonger's Diplomacy. That lets us play out our Mounting Anger, 2 Kodachis, the Ronin Renegade from our arsenal, Lava Vein Loyalty from our hand. We can activate Phi to pick up our Phoenix Flame, and we can attack with Soul Lead Strike. Not necessarily in that order. But because we can put 7 links on the chain, we want to start our sequence with Mounting Anger. Usually, Kodachi sequencing has you putting your 4-power attacks as the momentum trigger. For example, Kodachi, Mounting Anger. But Mounting Anger is generally a must-block attack. If the attack hits, it generates an additional point of value. 1 for 5 Go Again. It's really not anything that any opponent wants to deal with. So if you can bait your opponent into blocking the Mounting Anger with a defense reaction, with a card from hand and armor, with 2 cards from hand, you are opening the field for your future attacks to hit and trigger your Mask of Momentum. We'll see how this looks. Like I said, the first thing we will do is not play our Mounting Anger. I disagree with this line. I would have liked to start with the Mounting Anger here. But we can still put it in the 3rd chain link to trigger Mask of Momentum. We'll see if Teklo wants to 2-card block it or has a defense reaction in hand. He doesn't. In paper events, you can order your Mounting Anger and Mask of Momentum triggers such that Mounting Anger goes second That means in a paper event, we would draw our card from Mask of Momentum before Mounting Anger asks us what we want to banish. Talishar has never worked that way. I don't know if it ever will. Talishar forces you to banish from hand before you see what your Mask of Momentum draw is. It's unfortunate, it's a bit suboptimal, but we can work with it here. We're going to banish our Soul Bead Strike based on wanting it to get over the Evo Sentry base arms, if it really comes down to it. If we play Lava Vein Loyalty, then our Soul Bead Strike. Soul Bead Strike gets the Shuko trigger, now attacks for 4, and Teklovossen can't one card block it to stop the Go Again trigger. So we're going to banish Soul Bead Strike here. It's possible we'll draw something that we would like to banish more. Instead, drawing a Rising Resentment. Rising Resentment, I am happier to put this in Arsenal. Again, set up for a future 5-card hand to really punish Teklovossen for not having armor. Which means we're just playing out the rest of this turn. Lava Vein Loyalty here getting blocked by the base arms. Pretty suboptimal from Teklovossen, but I'm absolutely fine with it. Going to activate Phi first to pick up our Phoenix Flame. Phoenix Flame here getting the Shuko buff. It is still suboptimal for Teklovossen to block our 2-power Phoenix Flame. You could say it is better to attack with Soul Bead Strike for 4. I would just rather get my damage where I can. Either way, Teklovossen not blocking the Soul Bead Strike. We are not playing our Rising Resentment, so we will pass the turn, stick it in Arsenal, and draw some heat. Teklovossen here playing a Throttle. Getting the boost, 6 Go Again is not something I'm interested in blocking. Mech historically is not something that we are ever going to block unless it is lethal damage. Activating the Cogsworks base legs here to generate an additional action point that Teklovossen isn't going to use. That said, he does play out Sentry base legs. Might as well get your value, question mark, where you can. We will start our turn with the Rising Resentment. I can talk a bit about sequencing here. This is chain link 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We can play out our entire hand, generate 7 links. We cannot work a Phoenix Flame into the chain based on Breaking Point, Kadachi costing a total of 3 resources, and only having 2 Draconic Chain Links before we play the Breaking Point. That said, still a great line to take if Teklovossen stops both of our Mask of Momentum triggers. We can activate Phi for free without the action point to play the Phoenix Flame, but we can stick it in our arsenal. Although we can generate 7 links here, we don't have a Mounting Anger type effect to bait Teklovossen into blocking. So we will simply start with our 3-power attack. Now that this 3-power attack has been blocked, we can take our same line as on turn 1, Kadachi, double strike. Teklovossen does not have an easy way to block any of these 1-power attacks, so he's either going to give us a whole-ass card to stop 1 point of damage, or we have 5 intellect. Either way, as a 5 player, you are perfectly happy to see it. Double strike, indeed getting blocked by a whole-ass card. Let's pause. We can talk about where we are in this turn cycle. We have 3 attacks left in this turn. Double strike, Blaze Headlong, and either Breaking Point or Phoenix Flame. With our one resource, we can play the breaking point, arsenal the Phoenix Flame, or we can follow our Blaze Headlong with a FaB activation for the cost of 1, pick up our Phoenix Flame, attack with it, then arsenal the breaking point. Either way, we get an arsenal. If we play our breaking point, we push more damage, but there is no relevant on hit. Teklovossen does not have an arsenal for us to destroy. So how are we judging whether we want to play our breaking point for damage or our Phoenix Flame for efficiency and a better arsenal? It comes down to whether this double strike gets blocked. If this double strike for 2 gets blocked by a card from hand, we know that we cannot trigger Mask of Momentum this turn unless we wanted to Snapdragon Scalers the breaking point to pick up a Phoenix Flame, to Phoenix Flame for 1. That, to me, feels like a very loose play. I would rather save Snapdragons to get more value later. So, we play the double strike. If it gets blocked and we cannot easily trigger Mask of Momentum, we Blaze Headlong, we Phoenix Flame, we arsenal the breaking point for more damage later. If the double strike does not get blocked, we Blaze Headlong, we breaking point to push more damage and make it more difficult for Teklovossen to stop our Mask of Momentum trigger. If the trigger goes through, we arsenal the card we draw. If he 2-card blocks our breaking point, we pick up our Phoenix Flame and arsenal that. That was a lot of information for me to throw at you. I'm very passionate about Kodachi lines. All of this is to say, whether or not this double strike gets blocked is going to shape the rest of our turn. It does get blocked. We cannot easily trigger Mask of Momentum this turn. So we are going to take the more efficient play and save our breaking point for a later turn. We attack with the Blaze Headlong. We activate our FaB, paying 1 resource to do so. We attack with our Phoenix Flame for 1, and we arsenal our breaking point. If Teklovossen had an arsenal this turn, I would be much more inclined to play the breaking point for its hit trigger, even if we aren't getting Mask of Momentum value. As it is, we can just save it. Teklovossen here pitching 2 blues to play the Evo Soul Steel Memory from Banish. At this point, it has no effect, but it is a 3-block with Temper. How can we sequence this turn? Brand with Cinderclaw, plus 2 Kodachis, plus our breaking point is 4 chain links, 3 draconic links. Our 2 ravenous rabbles make for 6 links. Again, the breaking point does not have go again, so we cannot work a Phoenix Flame into this chain, but we can do what we did last turn. 3 attacks, do we get a hit trigger? 3 attacks, do we get a hit trigger? Judge whether we are picking up our Phoenix Flame from there. How this turn starts is with a Brand with Cinderclaw, followed by a Harmonized Kodachi, followed by maybe a Ravenous Rabble, maybe another Kodachi. It really depends on how Teklovossen is going to block with cards in hand or with this Steel Soul Memory. Blocking the Brand with Cinderclaw, let's follow this with a Ravenous Rabble. The reason we are following with a Ravenous Rabble as opposed to a Kodachi is that we want to make awkward sequencing for Teklovossen. 4-1-1-4 is a lot more awkward than 1-1-4-4, and the reason for that is Teklovossen is inclined to block this first 4 because it represents almost half of his remaining life total. But if he blocks the first 4, then he's more likely to take damage from the second 4. But if we send Kodachi, Kodachi, Rabble, he blocks the Rabble, the second Rabble comes down and doesn't represent any threat. Yes, it is a significant amount of his remaining life total, but there's no hit trigger. We want there to be a hit trigger on the second rabble, not on the first one. Rabble coming for 4, revealing a lava burst on the top of the deck. Great news for us. All of these hit triggers represent an additional 5 points of damage, possibly more, since we have Snapdragons available. Following that rabble with double Kodachi Ravenous Rabble, putting our Mask of Momentum trigger on a 4-power attack to make blocking very awkward for Teklovossen. Remember, we still have a breaking point in Arsenal that at this point in the game just represents a solid amount of damage. It will be our 3rd Draconic Link, so we can still put our Phoenix Flame in Arsenal. Teklovossen here losing the game by letting this Ravenous Rabble hit, trigger Mask of Momentum. We get our Lava Burst. We have a floating resource. We have our Snapdragon Scalers. We can play all 3 attacks, our Lava Burst, our Breaking Point, and the Phoenix Flame that we will pick up with FaB. Realistically, this sequencing doesn't matter if we are sending Lava Burst, Breaking Point, Phoenix Flame, or if we are sending Breaking Point, Phoenix Flame, Lava Burst. Does Lava Burst get the Shuko trigger? Does Phoenix Flame get the Shuko trigger? Realistically, it doesn't matter. If it did matter, if Teklovossen had a little more life or defense to play with, I like sending Lava Burst, Phoenix Flame, Breaking Point. I want Phoenix Flame to get the Shuko trigger. If Lava Burst attacks for 6, that is an efficient 2-card block from Teklovossen. But if Phoenix Flame gets the Shuko trigger, Teklovossen does not have an efficient block. Most of his cards, if not all of them, will block for 3. So a 2-card block on the Lava Burst overblocks by 1. A 1-card block on the Phoenix Flame overblocks by 1. We are getting more value out of our attacks by sending the Lava Burst first and letting Phoenix Flame get the Shuko trigger. But like I said, we just win the game this turn. Sequencing doesn't matter. There's nothing Teklovossen can do to both stay alive this turn and also come back to win. And Teklovossen packs it up. This is week 0 of Bright Light. I have no idea what Teklovossen decks will look like by the time we reach the end of ProQuest season, by the time we reach the end of Bright Lights season, by the time we reach the point that Teklovossen hits Living Legend. This may not be the final iteration of the deck. This may not be a good iteration of the deck. But good Teklovossen lists that want to be building a large arsenal of Evo equipment are going to start with no block value, and that is something FaB really wants to take advantage of, whether on Kodachis or not. Kodachi Mask of Momentum had great value over the course of this turn, but if you're on Emberblade Pouncing Links, you're doing more damage to Teklovossen over a shorter amount of time, and he still can't stop your damage through armor blocks, and he can't stop your Mounting Anger or your Bittering Thorns hit triggers easily. I think this matchup is going to end up being very easy for FaB, very favored, because Teklovossen needs time to build up those Evos, and that isn't something FaB really can give him, unless you're hitting the most awkward draws. I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you learned a little something. This video was probably more informative about proper Kodachi sequencing than about the real nuts and bolts of the Teklovossen matchup. But this is information you can take forward into all of your games, and including Teklovossen games. If you liked this video, please be sure to smash that like button under the video, subscribe if you are not already a subscriber, and leave any questions or feedback for me in the comments section. I enjoyed making this video for you. I enjoyed playing this game, and I will enjoy bringing you more daily FaB gameplay tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day.